Hey, this is Chris from Rekkid Talk, and I'm doing a ranking episode. This is going to be ranking the CD EPs, a baker's dozen from my collection. So I got the idea from Pete Pardo, the Sea of Tranquility. So their regular weekly panel show called the Hudson Valley Squares. So they recently did an episode, and I'll link it in the description and maybe at the end in the end screen, where they were ranking their favorite EPs. Their list was based largely on heavy metal. And so I'm going to do that. I'm going to do 13 of them from my collection. Um, I don't know if you really want to think of this as a favorite to least favorite sort of ranking, as just 13 from my collection. What I've tried to do is I know the concept of EP is a little bit ill-defined, but I kind of tried to stick to, so it's not a CD maxi single. So it's not like a single off of somebody's album with maybe some unreleased tracks, some bonus tracks, remixes, live tracks, that sort of thing. So I tried to not include that. I tried to have these be standalone stuff. Think there's going to be one example of something that was the first thing a person did, where a couple of the songs did make it on their debut full-length album. And also, at what point does an EP become a full-length album? I don't really think that's well defined. I think the standards of that were probably different in, say, the 60s and 70s versus particularly the 90s. You'll see an example of that. So let's get into them. So number 13, I'm going to do Golgo Bordello Yeast Infection. So this was released in 2005. I think these were some extra tracks that didn't make their Gypsy Punk album or some of their other ones. So that's a very Golgo Bordello looking album cover. So there's number 13. Number 12, The Mysteries of Life Focus on the Background. So this is Frida Love and Jake Smith. Frida was from Blake Babies and Antenna. Jake was also in Antenna. This was their group. This was an EP they put out in 1997. Flat Earth was a small Indianapolis-based indie, as they were from sort of the Bloomington, Indiana sort of indie rock scene. My number 11 is Bullet La Volta, Gimme Danger. So Bullet La Volta was a Boston sort of punk alternative band from the late 80s, early 90s. They kind of ran with the Blake Babies and Lemonheads and those sorts of bands along the way. This has, you can see 3 of the 5 tracks are live tracks, including a cover of Kiss's Detroit Rock City. It was originally on Metal Blade Records, but then this was a re-release by RCA, because they were on RCA briefly. This was released in 1990. Number 10 is Grandpa Boy. And so this was on Soundproof Monolith Records. And basically the joke here is that Grandpa Boy is Paul Westerberg. So this was something that Paul Westerberg released under the Grandpa Boy pseudonym. His stereo mono release later on, I think the mono part of it was billed as being by Grandpa Boy, but it's Paul Westerberg. Number 9, this is Lauren Hoffman. This is the most complicated title of all of them. The chemist said it would be all right, but I've never been the same. And so this was on Pitch Tent Records. So this was her release before she did her major label debut. In fact, her only major label record, Megiddo. I showed that for the Halloween contest. A couple of the songs, the first 2 songs, Persephone and Blood, did make that album as well. And Persephone in particular is one of the strongest tracks. I think we're to number 8. So this is a recent indie band that I've been kind of championing. Nuantis. So they're currently on Bandcamp. They're listed as being from Philadelphia. When they made this, they were listed as being from Portland, Oregon. So I guess they've relocated. I don't know the story there. I don't know if they're originally from Philadelphia or what the story is there. But this was something I picked up on Bandcamp. So it's a 5-track EP. In fact, this is the only physical product they have at this point of time. This was released early 2021. My understanding is I think they are trying to put together a full-length album. I don't know if some of these tracks will be on that as well or not. That remains to be seen. Number 7, we've got the Jon Spencer Blues Explosion with experimental remixes. So this is some fun stuff. Bellbot. So this is like a remix album. So maybe I'm breaking the rules by including this, but what the hell, I included it. So some crazy Jon Spencer Blues Explosion stuff. That really should have been the cover. There they are eating at the diner. All right. What number are we at? I think we're at number 6. Yeah, number 6. So here's some 9 Inch Nails, Broken. I also have 9 Inch Nails, Fixed. So very fancy, but this cardboardy after 30-ish or so years, 29 years. This is released in 1992. Starts to get a little bit problematic, but there's some 9 Inch Nails for you. Broken. Number 5, I had to eventually have some Juliana Hatfield, so this is in one of those chintzy little cardboard sleeves. Juliana Hatfield and Frank Smith sitting in a tree. So this is a 6-track EP. The song "If Only We Were Dogs" she later redid on the Juliana Hatfield 3 reunion album. So if you're thinking, oh, this is her doing duets with some dude named Frank Smith, no, Frank Smith is a band. So Frank Smith was an alt-country band led by a guy named Aaron Sinclair, who had relocated from Austin, Texas to Boston. He eventually went back to Austin and now has a garage band, but this was an alt-country band. So if you're ever wondering what Juliana Hatfield would sound like if somebody was playing banjo and somebody was playing pedal steel guitar, well, this is your chance. This is her alt-country album. Number 5, okay, so... Oh, number 4. So as long as we're going to do some country, we're going to talk about some Caitlin Rose, Dead Flowers. And just as a hint, there's going to be more Caitlin Rose content in an upcoming video, as her full-length debut was re-released on vinyl recently. But this is on Theory 8 Records, so this is a tiny little Nashville-based indie. She's sort of your quintessential East Nashville, too alt for country, true country to be indie rock. But Gorilla Man is an awesome, funny song. Answer in One of These Bottles, considering she was probably in her late teens or early 20s when she wrote the song, is way too good of a drinking song for somebody to be writing at that age. Number 3, this is Unrest with their EP Isabel Bishop. This is something I randomly bought used back in the 90s, and I thought it was great. This is on 4AD. You may know them from like releasing stuff by like the Pixies and Throwing Muses. Notice that the lengths of the song are given to the 100th of a second. It might be very important if you're making a mixtape. Probably the best song, Isabel, and Yes, She Is My Skinhead Girl. Probably the best songs on there. Number 2, let's do some Proto Grunge. Green River, Come On Down. So this is 1985 LSR Records, and then it also has Homestead Records. So it's a little bit confusing exactly who is released by. But Swallow My Pride in particular, it's the shortest song, but I think that's really a banger. This band featured members that went on to bands like Pearl Jam and bigger than Pearl Jam, Mudhoney. bigger in my mind, at least. And then number one, this is the only one that got mentioned on the Pete Pardo Sia Tranquility show. And so this is Alice in Chains, Jar of Flies. This has to be probably one of the most famous EPs from the 90s. It's got 7 tracks on it. In an earlier era, this would maybe 1 or 2 more songs would have been a full-length album and nobody would have questioned it. But this was in the mid-90s when everybody was putting together like 15-track long CDs that a lot of them are a chore to get through. I think this went like triple platinum. Obviously has some of their very famous songs on it. So there are 13 CD EPs from my collection. A few weeks down the road, I'm going to do the same thing with vinyl EPs. I don't have a ton of vinyl EPs, but I've got enough to probably put together a list of 10 or so. So, hope you enjoyed a little bit of a dive into the world of the extended play record.